Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to What Makes the Four Yogas Work, Vivekananda's Philosophy of Yogic Pluralism. This is from Swami Sarvapriyananda's channel. I was just going through it, trying to find something not too long, not too short, because that Sadhguru one took forever. I should have kept my mouth shut a lot longer, but I couldn't help but obviously react to the video and say what I had to say. I'm hoping I don't have to do that with this one. I skipped the introduction a little bit to get to this. But this one kind of popped up. I was like, okay, what makes the four yogas work? I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm not exactly sure what the question is technically asking. I understand how they work, but is there maybe a deeper question that he's trying to ask? So let's go ahead and get started.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, and namaste, namaskar, good morning to everyone here. We've had this is a very sacred time. We just had Ram Navami a few days ago, and then Hanuman Jayanti, and then in the Jain tradition, Mahavir Jayanti, Passover is going on, Ramadan is going on, and Happy Easter. So I hope I've covered everyone. That's a lot that's going on at this time. I want to thank you all for, in the words of Swami Vivekananda, your warm and cordial welcome. I'm always grateful to speak here at the Vedanta Society of New York. I always feel at home, and I'm honored and privileged to be able to share my thoughts with you in this sacred setting in the presence of Thakur Ma and Swamiji, and to see so many good friends and familiar faces today, and some new friends too. In my presentation today, I'm going to share with you my own understanding of the four yogas as taught by Swami Vivekananda. This understanding has been shaped, of course, by the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, and Swamiji himself, and the wisdom of the many Swamis and Pravajikas of the Ramakrishna order with whom it has been my honor to associate through the years. I don't want to forget anyone, but I do want to mention a few names. I want to especially note the guidance of my own guru in this regard. I would like to acknowledge the work and the talks of our very own Swami Sarvapriyananda, who is here with us today. So often when I'm speaking, it's when he's not here, so I'm very, very happy to have his presence here with us today. And I've been inspired by so many teachers in the Ramakrishna order. Pravajika Vrajaprana, a very dear friend of mine, Pravajika Gayatri Prana, Swami Atmagyanananda from our DC center, which is our nearest center to where I live. And my very good friend Swami Medhananda. And in fact, I would like to recommend his most recent book, Swami Vivekananda's Vedantic Cosmopolitanism. There are a few areas that I touch upon today, and he goes into those into much greater depth. And I highly recommend that book. And his earlier book, Infinite Paths to Infinite Reality, Sri Ramakrishna and Cross-Cultural Philosophy of Religion. So all of these wonderful people have really shaped my understanding of the topics I'm going to share with you. Finally, my perspective has also been shaped by the teachings of the great sages, the rishis and arhats, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the prophets and saints, and the philosophers and theologians of the world's traditions, which it's been my very deep privilege to study in this lifetime. I'm mentioning all these people and expressing my gratitude so that I can avoid the false and immodest claim that what I'm sharing with you today is entirely my own. It's not. However, any errors that I commit today, I can claim those. Those are mine. So the question I'm posing today is one I've been thinking about for a very, very long time. What makes the four yogas work? It's well known that according to Swami Vivekananda, the four yogas, Karma Yoga, the yoga of selfless action, Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of loving devotion, Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, and Raja Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, the yoga of meditation, are effective and independent paths to what is variously termed God realization, self-realization with a capital S, enlightenment, salvation, or liberation, that is, moksha. My question is, what is the mechanism by which these four distinct sets of practices bring about their shared goal, the same goal? Answering this question requires us to delve into the nature of realization itself. What is it that is being realized? Who is realizing it? From what are we being liberated? And to what are we being liberated? That is, if our current state is one of bondage, what would it mean to be free? Of what does that freedom consist for which we are striving? To answer these questions, we need to understand how we became bound in the first place. This will take us back to the mystery of creation itself. Why is there anything at all? In particular, why do we exist as we do now in the kind of universe in which we find ourselves? So the first section of my remarks I'd like to turn to now is the emergence of the many from the one. A quick note about creation. When we speak of creation in the Vedantic sense, we're not referring to a specific moment in time, a beginning point at which reality as we know it started. In the traditions of India, as in those of many other parts of the world, it's understood that creation is an ongoing process. Creation is happening right now, at this very moment. We tell stories about it as something that happened long ago because we're accustomed to thinking and speaking within our current frame of reference, which is shaped by the phenomena of time, space, and causation. We therefore think in terms of things having a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we tend to understand things through narratives that are shaped in just this way. The Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain traditions all invite us, however, in various ways, to think differently and to see our linear narrative way of constructing reality as just one frame of reference, one possible way of organizing what we know. We need, therefore, to understand that this way of thinking, while it's convenient for us, is not necessarily a perfect or complete representation of the nature of reality. So this is why we tell stories of creation. But really we're talking about something that is ongoing, that is happening at this very moment. The Taoist tradition of China, as well as much of contemporary physics, is very much in line with this traditional Indic way of thinking, as is the thought of many modern philosophers. We think of time, space, and causation more and more as something that is a lens through which we view reality, rather than as necessarily reflecting reality. In the Tao Te Ching of the 6th century BCE Chinese sage Lao Tzu, it is said that all that exists emerges from an eternal reality, which Lao Tzu terms the Tao, or the way. He tells us that, quote, the way that can be named or described is not the eternal way. He then says that the nameless, that is, the indescribable, is the origin of the myriad creatures. That, at least, is the English translation of scholar Victor Mayer. In other translations of this text, the phrase the myriad creatures is rendered as the 10,000 things. There are, of course, many, many more than 10,000 things, even in our relatively tiny corner of the universe. The late, great Carl Sagan would remind us there were billions and billions of things in our corner of the universe. But this was how philosophers referred to the phenomenal world in ancient China, as the 10,000 things. Similarly, and roughly during the same time period, the Upanishads, the textual fountainhead of the Vedanta tradition, speak in many places of the emergence of the many from the one. In the 4th section of the first chapter of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, for example, it is said that the one became the many by dividing itself into countless beings, playfully suggesting that this was done out of a desire for companionship on the part of the one, or out of fear, which can arise when we are in a state of solitude, as the one is, as an utterly unique being. Now, one might object that a perfect being, such as the infinite one from which all beings emerge, would surely not feel emotions like loneliness or fear. The suggestion that the many emerge from the one for reasons such as these points to what an infinite mystery this emergence is. We can only begin to comprehend it by approaching it through the lens of experiences to which we can relate. So, primal experiences like loneliness or fear, as well as love, such as the love of the creative process, which drives an artist to create. Later, after the Upanishadic era, in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, it is affirmed that the one does not literally feel loneliness or fear, Nor does it even literally divide itself to become the world.
Okay.
Rather, it only appears to do so. This process of creation through appearance or manifestation is known as Maya, a term which is cognate with our English word magic. Maya is the power of creation, through which the One, the infinite Brahman, the nameless and indescribable Tao, gives rise to and manifests as the manifold world of phenomena.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to pause it and say, you know, though it's kind of weird to say that this infinite one is lonely, and to create many of itself to be a companion to itself, which would be kind of weird because it's almost like me creating like, oh hello finger, how are you? There's two of you now. You know, it's like it's still you. It's not something separate from yourself, which he then explained right after that, saying that, you know, this illusion, this many is actually still the one. It's just an illusion of it, Maya.
The cosmos, which we experience as our reality, and whatever other parallel universes are out there. In the words of Sri Ramakrishna, quote, "Those who realize Brahman find that it is Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings." We ourselves are, of course, manifestations of the one infinite reality, infinite finite centers of an infinite consciousness. This is what it means when the Upanishads state that we are that the true self, the Atman, shares the same nature as and is ultimately identical with Brahman. So, moving now to how the one becomes the many, or appears to become the many, I move on to the process of differentiation and the ego. The process of creation, the Maya by which the one manifests as the many, is a process of differentiation. The infinite one projects from itself the infinitely many. Our sense of individuality is therefore closely bound up with the process of creation itself. As it is described in the Sankhya system of Indian philosophy, we become differentiated from one another and from the rest of the realm of nature, or prakriti, by something called ahankara. Ahankara, which literally means the I maker, I meaning the personal pronoun I, not this I, is the mechanism by which we come to perceive ourselves as individual beings, distinct from one another and from the rest of the cosmos. The Latin equivalent of ahankara, which has found its way into the English language as well, is ego. And analogously with ego, ahankara, or ahankar, has come to refer in modern Indic languages such as Hindi to pride or to an excessive attachment to our individuality, as if it were the most important thing in the world, overriding even our sense of compassion and empathy for other beings, right? We say such a person is egotistical, right? They have a big ego. This ego, importantly, is not our real identity. We are not prakriti, but purusha, or spirit, a term which is more or less equivalent to the Atman of Vedanta. This is our first clue to the answer to our prime question. What makes the four yogas work? Might the yogas have something to do with pointing us beyond the ego and back to our original nature? Individuality itself is not an evil thing. Indeed, it's integral to the process by which the one infinite reality has manifested itself as this wonderful universe. Individuality, we could say, is an essential element of the divine plan. The question is often raised, why does the infinite one choose to appear as the many? If it is already perfect and self-sufficient, what need does it have to manifest itself as the myriad beings making up the cosmos, as us, with all of our problems and all of our suffering? Many answers to this question are, of course, possible, and all of them probably bear some truth. We've already heard the suggestions that the one was lonely or fearful, or that the one simply loves to create. This last meaning, this...
Hold on, that last part there, though. It is as though this one infinite being is actually a being, like alive. It may never die, but still alive, conscious, making decisions. and the sheer fact that it can't be perfect if if it feels lonely, right? That's suffering. It suffers, so therefore it creates Maya, an illusion, so that it can no longer suffer. So Maya is the I don't know. It's I don't know if it's true. Like I guess let me just play with this right here. There's this one ultimate being that's either scared because it's alone or just lonely because it's alone. It wants companionship. So it creates this Maya. It's not separate from itself, but it's like a spell that it casts on itself to put itself into a type of sleep where it dreams this world. Kind of like how when we dream, we create the world in our dream. We are literally everything in that dream. The ground that we stand on, the us in it, the I in it, and the other people. And perhaps this one infinite being casts a spell called Maya that puts itself to a type of slumber or dream state where we are all obviously in this play, the Leela, as they call it. Even though I've not really watched too many videos on Leela, so I know it's a play. But anyways, there's this play going on in this one being, infinite being, where it's dreaming, and we are, this life right here is the dream. It's the reason why we're all one consciousness. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. But I think that I guess the biggest issue for me there is the fact that is this being an actual being, therefore a god, an individual, and not like just existence, you know. But to go back to what I threw out there, it would make sense that when we reflect inward, we get this blank state because our true self is in fact the consciousness that's having a dream. Kind of like, imagine if you, in your dream, you look inward and you realize that you're dreaming, you're able to, well, I don't know what you're capable of in your dream. I don't know if you can fly or not. I mean, even though sometimes that stuff does happen, but I don't know if you're able to consciously do it yourself. Hopefully that makes sense. But, you know, let me know what you guys think about that one. What I threw out there. Am I saying it's true? No, but it's making it, as he keeps saying, this being, this one infiniteness that has emotions for some weird reason, makes it human-esque. I mean, it's not to say that, you know, humans are unique, that it has unique emotions like fear or being alone. I mean, animals have that too. But it makes it human because we can relate to it. And the fact that it has fear, but it's a one infinite being that, from my knowledge, has no fear, is unaffected by emotions and stuff. So it's kind of, I guess, mixed messages right there.
Last suggestion would suggest that the cosmos is the divine Leela, or play, and that the Infinite One simply takes delight in manifesting and experiencing itself as all of us, the beings which constitute this vast universe.
Oh, there you go.
One also sometimes hears the speculation that as the ground of all being, and as consisting of infinite being, consciousness, and bliss, Anantaram Satchit Anandam, the one needs to divide itself into the many in order fully to become what it is in its pure infinite potential. Consciousness is an experience, and thus requires one who is conscious, and one of whom one is conscious, a subject and an object. Bliss or joy is an experience, and thus requires an enjoyer and that which is enjoyed. So the one becomes the object of its own awareness, by dividing into infinite centers of awareness, us. Similarly, it literally enjoys itself by becoming in the same way infinite centers of enjoyment, again, us. As non-dualism teaches us, the consciousness and bliss which make up the one are in reality non-dual and without subject and object. But when the veil of Maya, the matrix of space, time, and causation, is projected onto them, they manifest as infinite beings, striving for infinite consciousness and infinite bliss. Yet another answer is that this entire process is a mystery with no rational answer, It cannot be known with the finite mind, but only realized or experienced directly, as we ourselves are the one which has manifested as these myriad beings. The problem with individuality is not that it's bad, but it is a kind of self-forgetting on the part of the Infinite One. It involves a sense of being cut off from, of being other than our true self, and a corresponding alienation from our fellow centers of consciousness, our fellow beings. Part of the process of the One's self-manifestation as this vast cosmos is this very sense of self-alienation. It is this alienation from our true self, our entrapment in what becomes the prison of the ego, which we instinctively wish to overcome. This is the essence of what we refer to as our sense of bondage, a bondage that we wish to overcome. We experience this mumukshutva, this desire for freedom, initially as a desire for happiness and freedom from unhappiness. In the words of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the purpose of life is to be happy. My late father-in-law was also very fond of this expression, the purpose of life is to be happy. One is, of course, free to disagree, but I'm firmly convinced that this is true, that in fact, everyone wants to be happy. One could, of course, point to people who seem to enjoy being unhappy. I would argue, though, that it is this unhappiness that makes them happy, at least in the short term. They like that on some level, right? They're drawn to it. We all do the things we do because we want to be happy. We can act either for immediate happiness, immediate gratification, or we can act for our long-term happiness, sometimes by taking on very difficult work and maybe a lot of short-term unhappiness, or at least discomfort, in the name of this longer-term, more enduring happiness. This is true whether our aim be material or spiritual, whether we're aiming for what I would call the true and lasting happiness of realizing our oneness with the infinite, or for a finite goal like getting a raise or a promotion at work or an Olympic medal, winning an award in the field we've chosen to pursue, or earning the friendship and affection of others whose love we crave. Whatever our goal is, we strive for it because we aspire to be happy, and we think that achieving that will give us happiness. In reply to the possible objection that the idea that happiness is our fundamental motivation in life sounds selfish, I would respond that the objection presumes that it's possible to be really and truly happy when others are unhappy. I would like to submit that this is not the case, for reasons which should hopefully become clear very soon. While it's true that many people do pursue happiness at the expense of others, or even appear to be happiest precisely when they're making others unhappy, and I'm thinking maybe extreme cases of cruelty and so on, I would like to suggest that this is a very early and immature approach to happiness in terms of the soul's journey. For as the soul's journey unfolds, we find that our own happiness is ultimately bound up with the happiness of all beings. We all wish to be happy, but because of our alienation from our true self and our sense of otherness from the rest of creation and what we mistakenly take to be other beings, we typically don't know how to go about being happy. The most obvious source of happiness is, of course, the gratification of the senses. I see something beautiful, I hear some good music, I eat a nice meal, and I'm happy. This, however, is the most temporary source of happiness. It lasts only as long as there's contact between our senses and their objects, or as a memory of such contact. If we think in terms of the purusharthas, the aims of life described in ancient Hindu texts.
Real quick, interesting, he said that. Not the Hindu text part, but as long as we keep it in memory. So it's not only the five senses that can give us temporary happiness, but it's also memory, the sixth part. I never thought about it that way, because obviously if you eat something delicious, it'll give you happiness while it's there. You touch something that feels amazing, which I did in fact touch, like a gel driver cover. It was really cool. It was a little bit of happiness there. It was a really cool thing to touch. You know, whatever it is that you touch, you're like, oh man, this feels amazing. It's temporary. You know, you see something that you really like, looks really cool, temporary happiness. Smell something really good. What else is there? Taste, smell, hear something very good, see and touch. But I never thought about the memory portion as something that gives you temporary happiness. because you remember it, you're like, oh man, that's some good times. But if you, it can make you suffer as well. Again, it's temporary happiness. But if you realize that, man, I have not been happy in a long time, that memory can make you suffer, because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how far I've sunk, how far away from happiness I am now compared to that moment in time that I'm remembering now, that's bringing me happiness. So the memory can be, it's a temporary happiness, but it also can be a source of course, much like anything else, can be a source of suffering. You touching something very hurtful, no good. You eat something that's nasty, no good. You smell someone, you smell something bad, not good. You see something disgusting, bad. You hear something screeching or like a bad noise, again, suffering, all suffering. And then the memory itself, you remember something bad, your five senses are replayed back in your mind with memory too, or the good things. So again, I never thought about memory perhaps as being another source of temporary happiness.
This form of happiness,
Or
or
temporary
karma,
anything.
not to be confused with karma, which we'll talk about in a bit, karma is the most ephemeral, the most fleeting form of happiness. A life spent solely in pursuit of sensory gratification is a life in which we experience brief moments of happiness, interspersed with moments in which we're anticipating the next moment of happiness, nostalgically recalling previous moments of happiness, or feeling frustrated because the next moment of happiness is not coming soon enough. This is, we could say, an immature state of being. And we've all been there, right? We're not saying these are the immature people, these are the mature people. We've all passed through this journey, right?
Okay, I think I'm going to pause it right there. So, speaking about the memory part, again, this is something that Sadhguru talks about, but it just never clicked to me, as in it is another source of temporary happiness or suffering as well. You know, all our senses can provide temporary happiness and temporary suffering. Same thing with our mind. And it will never be a permanent happiness. It will... Will it be a temporary suffering too? It can be. I mean, you know, physical things, so long as you're not touching something hot, you're not going to burn yourself, so you're not going to be unhappy or suffer from it. But your mind, I suppose, can be a very long-term suffering, but not a permanent suffering, hopefully. There are probably some diseases out there that could make it a long-term suffering. And I guess that's the same thing with your five senses as well, where some people have very sensitive eyes. If they don't use sunglasses or something, it literally hurts to see. I don't know about smell and taste or hearing. I mean, having overly sensitive hearing, they could just put things in their ear to kind of muffle the sound a bit. But you know, you get my point. For some odd reason, it just then clicked as in memory as a form of temporary happiness and a form of suffering as well. Even though Sadhguru has freaking been saying it a long time, it just finally clicked then. Anyways, that's at least part one for what makes the four yogas work. I'm hoping he gets to that pretty soon. He's going through a long explanation, but very interesting nonetheless. Very informative in a lot of parts too. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, and sound down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.